Hello and welcome to Technocracy. I'm Heena Goswami, editorial consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. In today's world, diplomacy is no longer confined to backroom meetings or formal summits. The digital revolution is transforming how countries cooperate, communicate, negotiate, or compete on the global stage. From tweets that declare ceasefires or trade negotiations, technology is redefining the art of diplomacy itself. Over the past decade, there has been a notable increase in the adoption of digital tools in diplomatic practices, reflecting a shift towards tech-enabled diplomacy. This rapid rise forces us to ask, in an era where algorithms draft talking points and embassies and leaders operate heavily on social media, who really controls the narrative of international relations? This is no longer a question of mere efficiency. Digital diplomacy is reshaping sovereignty, accountability, and global influence in fundamental ways. But what exactly is this tech-enabled diplomacy? At its core, it covers a range of interconnected practices. There's digital diplomacy itself, where social media platforms like X, TikTok, or Telegram become battlegrounds for real-time narrative warfare. Virtual summits are held online, breaking geographical barriers and reshaping how diplomats interact. Then there is cyber diplomacy, which governs cyberspace, from internet governance to setting norms around cyber warfare and cybersecurity. AI-augmented decision-making tools are now helping diplomats simulate negotiation, model risk, and analyze public sentiment with unprecedented speed and scale. Barbados has even taken a pioneering step by announcing plans to establish a virtual embassy in the metaverse, aiming to explore new frontiers of digital diplomacy. Yet, this digital surge brings stark inequalities. Many countries in the global south find themselves as policy takers rather than makers, often on the receiving end of disinformation campaigns that exploit fragile political environments. Algorithmic bias remains a significant concern in digital diplomacy. Studies have highlighted systematic biases in algorithmic decision-making, particularly in areas like digital visa processing, refugee screening, and border enforcement, which can reinforce inequalities and marginalize vulnerable groups. Big tech platforms mediate much of this diplomacy, but are not democratically accountable. UNESCO and International Telecommunication Union have stressed the urgent need to address digital sovereignty and geopolitical equity in this new landscape. Without inclusive governance, digital diplomacy risks becoming another arena of power concentration, leaving citizens further removed from decisions that affect their lives. Political stakes are also high. Diplomacy without borders is a reality now, but not without consequences. New tactics such as activism and cyber espionage are now being used as diplomatic tools. Countries deploy AI to simulate negotiation or anticipate responses from their counterparts, turning what was once a human-to-human dialogue into a complex interaction between algorithms. The Israel-Palestine conflict, for example, has seen digital narratives battle out intensely on TikTok, while the Russia-Ukraine war has unfolded as much as in Twitter threads as in official communiques. These new forms of communication are faster, but are also more opaque. Governments often use AI tools without disclosing their sources, the data inputs, or the biases inherent in the algorithms, raising critical questions about democratic oversight and transparency. This raises an ethical dilemma. As AI systems become more integrated into diplomatic processes, how can we ensure that their actions align with democratic values and public accountability? The gap between public awareness and behind-the-scenes digital maneuvering threatens democratic legitimacy. It is also important to remember that digital diplomacy is not just about making faster decisions. It's about who gets to shape peace, power, and public trust in a deeply interconnected world. We must demand greater transparency in AI assisted diplomacy tools, push for global ethical norms around technology mediated international relations, and support cross border dialogues that bring diplomats, engineers, and citizens together. To further understand the good and bad of diplomacy in the digital world, today we are joined by Mr. Dinakar Peri. Mr. Dinakar Peri is a fellow in Security Studies program at Carnegie, India. Earlier, he was a journalist with the Hindu newspaper covering defense and strategic affairs for almost 11 years. Welcome to Technocracy. And you have been a defense analyst for long and you have worked around foreign relations. So, earlier there was a phase, or like for long time, foreign policy or diplomacy was something that came down to masses, filtered through newspapers or TV channels, or like much later through books. Like the policies, the ideologies, or the rationale will come down much later. But now, we know that head of states like to break the news for themselves, and it has become like everybody on Twitter seems to be a foreign policy expert. So, how did this evolution come about? How this, foreign policy became sort of a public affair or a common masses thing?
So this is essentially a result of technology. So the technology cycles have been changing. So it's an incremental thing. I mean, kinds of what was once, as you said, days or weeks or whatever, that is now literally we are on a minute by minute basis now. And that's, I mean, you can't, that's the reality of the times. And like everything, technology has an impact, I mean, on news cycles as well, or information as well. So, and probably in that sense, uh, there is, governments feel a need that they should put out things to the public faster. Everything is interlinked. I mean, if we can use a phrase, domestic implications on foreign policy. This phrase is talked about quite a bit. So in fact, technology is actually aiding that increasingly. I mean, people are getting more and more aware. They're more, in real time what's happening. So that has an impact. I mean, you can't, get away with it. So it has a plus, it has a minus. So how you deal with it, there are challenges as journalists we used to face it along, quite a bit. The whole thing of, I mean, things go out. How much of it is correct? How much is right? What is fake? What is not? That becomes a major challenge. In fact, one of the biggest challenges. But probably I would say, as technology or social media, this gains ground or gets more and more embedded, the plus the negatives probably outweighing the positives in some way, because there's so much of fake news just dumped in. I mean, things just fly, as we saw recently during Sindoor, or in the past when India-China standoff was going on, or during Balakot, during Uri, those episodes when we had tensions with Pakistan. Things were just all over the place. And unfortunately, the thing is, because things go so much, even well-informed people, or people say, even journalists or observers, analysts also sometimes fall for it. So realizing it looks seemingly genuine or seemingly credible, you try to take it, then you realize, oh, it's wrong. But the point is, you have propagated it. That also, and when someone who is considered an authority or someone, an analyst, observer, then someone putting out even inadvertently gains traction further. It only amplifies that, fake news. So it's actually a major challenge. But yes, I think that's this. This is the reality of the times, and technology is what it is. I mean, that's how things are.
To talk a little back, if you remember, like who were the first leaders, or who were the first, now everyone communicates, every embassy, every ministry, all over the world has like a Twitter account. But who were the first head of states, if you remember, who were to be tech savvy and take on to Twitter and Facebook in their earlier days?
Interesting question. I think Facebook details, I mean, I can't recall names probably, but see, Facebook came before Twitter. I mean, increasingly then, once Twitter picked up, say about 12, 13 years back, roughly about 13, 14 years back, around that time, 12, 13, 2012, 13, 14, somewhere around that period, you kind of suddenly there was a spot on Twitter, suddenly, oh, there is Twitter, you have to join it for following what's happening, that phase. But then things kind of in a way moved, everything literally moved on to Twitter. Kind of, Twitter now has become in a way, or X as it's called now, has in a way become the back office or the backyard for most official communications. Literally everyone, even if they want to meet, do anything, they just put it out there. Not even other platforms so much, first, in a way, the policy sphere or the decision makers, both observers, anyone who is in that domain of makers, observers, who follow, who respond, anything essentially happening there, and why is X or Twitter or X become what it is because of that. That's what lends its credibility to the platform. The other platforms are more informal. Say, for example, Instagram is more informal. Okay, now you put a picture, you put a video. In terms of a news, news or putting across news or actually delivering a hard news or news development, it happens primarily on, say, largely X. For that matter, that's exactly why we're all there. It's an occupational hazard for anyone following the domain.
It's especially occupational hazard for people who are a little temperamental as well, and might post something.
Well,
But now that public is getting aware or getting more invested in their nations' relations with each other, do you feel like, some of the complexities is missed by the public because they feel like they are getting information in real time, but the nuances, the rationale of it is somehow missed, and also the public emotion gets hyped up and it leads to needless speculation or conspiracy theories, and does it have like a negative effect on the foreign relations because of how public gets invested?
absolutely. I mean, what you said is spot on. I mean, I can't agree more on that. Because okay, let's just look at a few examples. I mean, just look at the trajectory of again going back to what I said, India-Pakistan relations. See, 2016 when the first, after the present government, 2014 when they came in, 2016 was the first major, terror attack, loss of lives, etc. The scale of it, the sheer scale of it. When that happened, the Uri attack on the military camp, and then then there was expectation from the public that they'll deliver a response. And because it was also the information filtered out in real time, what happened, visuals unfolding, strike from military camp, etc. How everything that unfolded in those incident and the next couple of days, how things panned out. There's naturally an expectation of the public, and public even in fact airing their this thing for vengeance or a response to do something, to hit for a military response, for a kinetic response, not just a response, a kinetic response. But it's quite visible. So that actually also puts pressure on elected governments. End of the day, see, in a democracy, elected governments have to listen to people. They have to win an election. So that's it's a loop. So then the elected governments also come under pressure to live up to it, to to respond to it. And then we saw the Uri surgical strikes that happened, in September 2016, and events how it unfolded. So then let's move 3 years down the line, 2019, when Balakot happened, Pulwama, the attack on the CAPF's soldiers were killed, a major attack, after some gap of a break in terror cycle in a way. But despite local incidents are happening, but not at that scale. When Balakot happened, or the Pulwama happened, right after that again, there was because again of how visuals unfolded, how information was flowing in, and the precedents that set earlier by the government. So people are again like, okay, there has to be a response. There has to be a kinetic response. You have to hit the terror infrastructure. You have to teach Pakistan a lesson. That's the expectations. I mean, it was quite clear. And again, as I said, it exerts a pressure. Public, end of the day, public response, perceptions matter. So, and then we saw the Balakot airstrike. Feb 26, the airstrike, 27, the confrontation with Pakistan that happened, the loss of the jet, etc., all that happened. The 2 days, Feb 26 and 27, 2019. So again, that in a way, the cyclical, was that. It didn't happen. There's expectation, there's outcry from public, there's, things. So then government had, of course, India did a response to strategic communication, but it also a large part also kind of addressing or assuaging the domestic expectations, satiating the domestic audience in many ways. It's both. And so it actually served that template, both purposes. The messaging is a different part of it. The strategic messaging is a different part. But there are two parts to it, the domestic part of it. And again, now fast forward to a few months, 2 months back in May, when Pahalgam happened. I mean, the visuals were literally out in real time of how just tourists who were just out there, were just killed in cold blood, targeted and killed. So that drew a severe response, and then and there also expectation that the only question was how will it be done? How will India's response be? It is not a question of if. That if phase was crossed. It's a question of how will it respond, in what way, and how soon. Probably everyone was actually that. Even Pakistan was ready. After Pakistan was actually ready militarily, saying, okay, we are waiting for an response. Don't do whatever they were doing their messaging. But the point was you were at that stage, and it was all in a way, the visuals for the public. It was all driven by what was unfolding in real time on TV, in social media. Even when the first hit happened on May 6th, the night of May 6th, 7, when Indian Air Force, Indian Army and Air Force hit the terror targets in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Visuals are coming now. Nothing was released per se officially. Most of the visuals are actually coming out from on the ground by people in Pakistan saying, okay, the building next to me was hit, or someone on the road saying, okay, bombs were falling off, or the munitions were dropping in. So we actually got real-time inputs from there. So that actually has now become a major part of it. Anything unfolds, visuals come out from there. Anything, for that matter, literally, practically anything. OSINT is the game, or open source intelligence, as we call it, is the game now. So that also has a its own cycle. So those visuals kind of fed the larger public. And then then the next 3-4 days unfolded. We saw how a lot of fake news was also, again, coming back to the fake news, how bringing that element of how it actually has a negative impact of all this. See, the build up, India did something. Say, what is the significance of it? Let's break it into two parts again. The significance of it. India, for the first time in decades, actually hit the Punjab part of Pakistan, the heartland of Punjab, and even on May 6th. And as this thing unfolded for the next 3 days, May 10th, India actually hit the heart of Pakistan establishment. The Nur Khan, Chaklala, all those bases were, well, no one would have thought India would do, but they were hit. That was on May 10th. So between the two, India did something which probably, many of us would not have. We knew India would respond militarily, but we don't expect this kind of response. So that was again a new, threshold set from a military sense, saying that India will do this. India can and will do this. One is the intent, one is the capability. Here, both were demonstrated. That's one. That's a strategic messaging. But now the flip side of it, what we're talking about, public and how things go. So, for example, there were the amount of fake news that was just flying all over the place. I mean, as now I'm not a journalist anymore, just recently stepped out of that mantle. But even when Sindoor, I was, as a journalist, and even before that, the biggest time we actually spend is dispelling, trying to figuring out what is the correct part of it, what is the credible, what is the real one news, especially when the official communication go quiet for some time, whatever is the reason, which is something that's changed, but there's still a lot of scope to improve the strategic messaging. So when that's absent, especially, for example, specific example, the time of when Balakot airstrike happened, when the airstrike happened, we actually got to know from Pakistan, not from India, that the strike happened early in the morning on that day, on February 26th. And then we were out and trying to find out the rest of the day. There's no information flow most of that day. We actually got input coming in from Pakistan saying, okay, this is what I know, something is happening, etc. And when mainstream media does not say, journalists like me, if I don't get double, triple that level of validation of some information, I won't put it out. And if we don't put it out, fake news just has its field day. It's all over the place. I mean, there's no one to deny it. It gets its own it gains its own traction because there is no one to deny. That's a problem. That's something the system should understand. It's essential why mainstream, regular media, journalists, expert, these guys put out things verified. Say, okay, this is what it is. This is incorrect. You can still wait. Okay, details will come. We'll wait for it. Say, okay, this is what happened. This is going on. Please wait. But the rest of the things are wrong. Or okay, this is wrong. Something literally, when the number of examples, we have seen too many of them now. So I can't deny something, or many of us can't, or on a TV, a channel, or a paper, newspaper, or they can't put out something saying this is wrong unless we have that level of credibility or authentication. In the absence of which, you can't even deny it. Confirming it is a different thing. First is denying. Okay, this is wrong. I can't say that without that level of credibility or confirmation at a certain level. If I don't do that, or all of us don't do things, so just fine. Just, I get messages saying, "Oh, is this right?" I said, "I hear so much late, but I can't put it out." That's a problem. So again, just coming back quickly on the op Sindoor. May 8th, a lot of things were said. Navy went somewhere, hit Karachi, something, and just proliferation of, it multiplied, amplified many fold. A lot of channels were running it, a lot of credible people were tweeting it, putting it out. So for that, the night of May 8th, for a certain number of hours, till midnight, early morning, everything was all over the place. What is the flip side of it? So one was the fake news. People were saying, "Oh, India did it, whatever." That's just something is great. But the point is, it's rhetoric beyond reality. One. Two, the flip side is you lost the international credibility, international narrative. So that's the fallout of it. Everything has a flip side. This is the flip side. And that's something we have to do a course correction. I mean, Op Sindoor was actually a great lesson in that, sense of the larger strategic messaging, how social media, the same thing, becomes a liability.
What we saw during Operation Sindoor was a lot of misinformation being put out by bad actors, or if not, let's say bad actors, then let's say actors who did not act in a very responsible manner, like Indian media houses. That is one thing, and it does become difficult to find out the truth from the lie. And especially there was a I feel environment of insecurity and fear for people whose families were at the border areas, and because nobody was really knowing what is happening. And there was some attempt from Indian agencies to curb the misinformation, but one does feel it was maybe a little late, just a little. I mean, more could have been done. But what happens when head of states sort of are playing that misinformation or conspiracy game, or having public meltdowns on Twitter, or claiming something in foreign policy which the other nation would deny? For example, the example of ceasefire claimed by Donald Trump. And what kind of ramification does it have when especially if we take the example of President Trump? He's known to have meltdowns, right, on Twitter. How does that bode for foreign policy matters?
Well, see, that's again, I think it's just a outcome of the current times. It's just about this thing. So each one taking it one notch above or below, whatever you want to call it, in that sense. So when the whole mediation, etc. So the problem is, it actually again goes back to how the other perception shapes up. One, it complicates foreign policies. See, foreign policies are not made on Twitter. You can't just write a line and make a foreign policy. The whole gamut of things that go behind. There's a lot of things take time. There's a lot of complexity involved. You make offer, you trade, you make a iron out a deal. So unfortunately, yes, that falls a victim of this, because again, these all in the short term it might seem still okay, but the point is these all have long-term impacts. We don't even know how that will play out. Today we can't even speculate. Okay, the impact of this may have a long-term ramification which probably we don't even realize today. something just said because you're tied up things in a certain way, because you've announced it, you can't go back. It complicates, vitiates things. And I mean, that's it's, I mean, at the end of the day, relations are between two nation states. It's not about individuals come and go. But the point is, individuals in that situation play something. It complicates things. For example, as simple as now how the India-US relations have now kind of taken a downturn in the last, especially in the last 2 weeks. Since the repeated assertions by US President Trump that he mediated the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and India being very clear, candid, and reiterating that ceasefire per se. See, President Trump may have played a role in trying to reach out to Pakistan and saying, okay, convincing them to say make peace with India or tone things down. But the point was from the Indian side, it has been fairly clear as well. If you see the sequence of events of how things played out from May 6th to May 10th, it's fairly clear that the amount of the response, the Indian response, military response, I mean, on May 10th was definitely a crystallizing factor in Pakistan reaching out to India through the military hotline and saying, okay, let's talk now. No, I was saying, as I mentioned earlier, the Indian response, Indian hits on the key, literally heartland of the Pakistani military establishment, or the bases that were hit, the manner with which they were hit. There was no collateral damage, the major damage, but it was all a message to say, okay, we did this. And as the Air Force Chief said recently, last week, pointed to all the places, kind of listed out all that the military targets that were hit, the air defense sites, radar sites, etc., etc. So that definitely played a role. But the point is, the assertion, repeatedly asserting, and then India trying to kind of find a middle way to put the reality across. It kind of definitely vitiated the relationship. Meanwhile, Pakistan actually now found new friendship with the Trump administration. Their new friend, the Field Marshal Asif Munir. He had a luncheon meeting, with Trump 2 months back. He was again there, making a lot of comments and nuclear rhetoric. Again, just we saw it, 3 days back. But that's the reality. I mean, that's how, that's there to see. That's unfortunately the reality of this, for making foreign policy or
Now,
making policy formulations on social media.
I know that you're no longer a journalist now, but you were a journalist just a little while back. So, how do you deal with the challenges of finding out foreign policy decisions, or, for example, about ceasefire from a Donald Trump tweet? Do journalists still have sources where they find out before public, or now has it become more common to find out in real time with rest of the public? And then with public, it leads to a lot of speculation and theories, and journalists might be more measured because, as you said, you need that information to be validated twice or thrice or by 2 or 3 channels to be able to put it out. So how has that, the role of journalist evolved in finding news with rest of the public and not be the one to necessarily convey the information to the public?
So see, if nothing else, or if any, the role of the regular or the mainstream media, if you want to call it, to give a name to it, has become even more critical now than before. Because that's the line which holds and ensures fake news is dropped and the real stuff gets propagated. That's the line, See, officially only so many things are denied. There are many things. Someone might just put out a tweet, but the point is the tweet is just one line or 2 line, whatever, 140 characters, 240 characters. But there's so much more behind that, beyond that. That's which some of it is said, some of it is not said because it's, say, operationally sensitive, or say too confidential, politically sensitive, whatever the case. So that's, if anything else, the role is even more, as I was saying earlier, even more critical. Because officially you can't say too many things. or the system will put out only so many things. It's through the media that the rest of things come out, whether it's be sources or be, as ground information where, people are on the ground, literally there, seeing it live, or speaking to someone there and trying to put out things in a certain way. But and that's precisely why that engagement of, what do you call, that the seamless communication between journalists and the system is also essential. You want to call it briefing or interaction, or we still do. I mean, that has not gone away. That cannot go away. No, that see, the social media cannot replace that. That's the system validating, reaching out to someone saying, okay, someone who is responsible, someone in the PROs or someone in the IW information, IW units of the Army, Navy, Air Force, or whoever in the system who is responsible, or otherwise people in the know, we reach out to them and say, okay, please tell me this. That cannot go away. That remains the basis of journalism. That can't go away. And especially for the sensitive domains like foreign policy, defense, that cannot go away. As I said, if anything, the mainstream media and journalists are even more relevant than ever. I can't underscore that point.
Lastly, I mean, on a personal opinion note, do you think that, leaders, head of state should also refrain from making a spectacle of foreign policy? For example, what happened with the Ukrainian president and Donald Trump, and it felt like a television drama or bullying. And I'm sure like nobody who is on the Ukrainian side or has some sort of empathy, it would have gone down with them. Do you think it is something that should be, rather refrained from?
I agree. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as I said, you can't make foreign policies on, on social media or, that. But again, one of the videos you're referring to, things started off in some way, then went off in a different direction. As, in front of the cameras, as, the leaders were discussing in the White House, but just went out in a different direction entirely. That's one. But even otherwise also, yes. I mean, the larger point you make of, the policies being made on, or the direction of how things take, yes, absolutely. I mean, the point is, but again, the question is, how do you, that has to be an individual call. I mean, especially at that stage as leaders or decision makers, policy makers, again, for them to, be sure of that line and, adhere to it. I mean, again, who will tell them that beyond a certain point? That's exactly unfortunate. That's where the buck stops. And probably we'll have to live with it and scramble as things unfold.
Thank you so much, Dinakar sir, for joining us on this interview. And if I may say, thank you for your attention to this matter.
If you enjoyed watching this episode of Technocracy, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more AI related conversation, you can also watch IGPP Expert Talks AI Special Series.